Howdy Lineage 2 Classic fans, Ryan here to answer the burning question that's on everyone's mind today. What is the best class to start with in Lineage 2? And to do that, we're going to look at three areas. First, Lineage 2 Classic has been played in Europe for about 3 years. We're going to look at the Europe server and see what the top classes are there. Second, there's some unique questions to ask that apply to each person differently. Things like how many characters you're going to play, how much do you play, how much do you PvP versus PvE, and these other burning questions that help lead us to what's the right class for you. Lastly, NCSoft, they divide all the classes. There's 31 classes, 5 races, and they categorize them into 8 categories. We're going to look at those 8 categories and then finally drill down to what's the right class for you. So let's go ahead and just dive right in. What you're looking at here is the stats from the Europe server. The Europe server has been open less than 3 years, but that's more than enough time to get some information. First, we're looking at the XP. What classes earned the most XP in that time? And looking at the top 5 classes, it's a clear winner. That Titans and Grand Cavataris, and just to use their second class names, it's Tyrants and Destroyers. Tyrants and Destroyers dominate the XP boards. As we look further down past the top 5, it's very variable. You have a Hell Knight, a Sagittarius, a BD, and so forth. There's no other class that dominates the way that Tyrants and Destroyers do. Now, some interesting notes here. The server, even after 2 and almost 3 years of being open, it only has about 31 level 80 characters, which is the current max level apparently there. So it is the grind fest that everybody knows. So those of you who have the idea of, oh, we're going to reach max level in a month or something, it's not going to happen. Our max level will be 70 at first, and then we'll increase over time. We don't know that it'll match what they did in Europe because NCSoft is directly running our show, where the Europe show is run by another company, Innova. But that aside, if you're looking to say, hey, what can grind up the quickest, you would want to look at the orcs. So next, let's go ahead and take a look at, another thing before I leave this page, I'm sorry, is the total play time. So in L2, you can stay logged in 24/7. You don't get disconnected for inactivity because often you're in a cell shop or something else. And so it's really hard to tell. Again, the game has been out for almost 3 years, almost 1,000 days, and it's hard to tell from this how long they've actually spent playing, because you don't know when you look at the time how much is spent in the shop. But what is glaring is a few of these people, 49 days, 86 days, 44 days, what most likely happened in these cases is these are newer characters that were given all the buffs, a buff pet, and they were given Adina, epic jewels, whatever, to help power level them quicker. And if you've noticed, if you've played on the L2 Europe server, going from 1 to 70, those areas are empty because most people are at the 70 to 80 area. And it would be very efficient and quick to level up from 1 to 70, especially if you had the buffer and the Adina to support it. Alright, so let's move over to an area of interest to many is PvP. So here are the PvP counts, and you notice that when you get down to the top 10, the 10th person has 14,000 PvPs, where the first person has double that. And, you know, there's individual gameplay things that will affect everyone, but again, 3 of the top 5 are Tyrants. So that's something to take in. Tyrant seems to be a very solid class, both PvE and PvP. And as you go past the top 5, you will notice a lot more Tyrants are there still throughout the list. So if you say, hey, what's the best class to play? That's a really generic question, but the answer for many will be a Tyrant. Also, though, please do take note of the levels here. These levels, most of them aren't level 80 or anything even close to 80, some 77, 77, and so forth, but these are lower level PvPs, so these might be PK characters or something different at the very top, so don't take it as gospel, but looking overall, you can get an idea of what the best classes are, what the most active classes are in terms of PvP, and Tyrant really stands out. Now, the last slide I'm going to go ahead and show you is Adina. I don't like this slide for a few reasons. First of all, it doesn't show how much Adina these characters earned. Second, a lot of these characters you'll notice are level 1. And so that tells me it's taking Adina from in town. These are probably buy-sell alts. And it might count, I'm not clear, is this the amount of Adina they earned in-game, or is this the amount of Adina they have on them right now? There's a lot of vagueness regarding this to where this slide just really isn't helpful for me. So this is the information, though, regarding what's out there live from looking at 3 years almost on the European server. Now, with that understood, let's go ahead and look at your situation. How many characters will you play? Now, when I talk to some people, they say, oh, I'll play, I'm going to play one character, I'm going to focus that as my main. That's great. And that affects what class you play, as opposed to other people I've talked to, oh, I'm going to run a 9-person party from day one, which is crazy. You just don't want to go there. I think that's strongly ill-advised, and for a lot of different reasons. Play one character, play 2 maybe. You could even stretch to 3, where you're playing 2 and maybe 1 is your fishing alt or your buy-sell alt in town while you're playing the other 2. But I strongly, especially at the beginning of a new server, emphasize the importance of focusing on one character, building up in the community relationships in your clan, getting to know people, all that kind of stuff. Anyway, let's moving on. It's how will you play? There's people who play 100% manually. Everything that they're doing is them doing it. There's some that use macros, which, there's in-game macros, out-of-game macros, what have you. And there's some that bot. But how you play the game will affect you. I'll give you one example. If you're a mage, and let's say you 2-shot the mobs consistently, it's easy to make a macro that says, next target, use skill nuke, and then you go ahead and you attack the mob, which will move you from wherever you're at to the mob, because nukers are at range, and then you do the pickup of the drops. Now, that macro fails a lot of the time because your spells fail. At times in Lineage 2, you will cast your nuke and you will do 0 damage. And so what happens is the macro basically breaks. You go ahead and use 2 nukes on the mob, 1 fails. So now you move to the mob and the mob's beating you up. You pick up and your next target will not work. As long as you have a mob targeted, it won't take another target. So there's some challenges there that have to be overcome, where it's much easier as a melee character to macro. And then, of course, do you play in a party? Do you solo? Summoners are best, generally speaking, for people who will always solo, where large party needs a lot of support. So there's some questions there to answer for yourself. And then what are your goals? Are you focused more on PvE and being the first person to level 70 on the server or among the top 10? Or are you focusing, you're going to PvP all the time, which will slow down your progression? And being a lower level character, you will be weaker in PvP than the higher level character who just PvE'd up and passed you. There's some characters that are better at Adina, let's say a bounty hunter who spoils, but then also other classes that kill faster are pretty good with Adina. Some classes are designed as better in the Olympiad. Characters with pets, characters that have buffs are better Olympiad classes. Clan support, classes like Overlords, are really clan-based characters, and they're more difficult to level, but the rewards for leveling them are much higher. Raid bosses, there's certain parties, if you want to farm raid bosses, there's certain classes that are better for that. And then lastly, are you looking at a short-term or long-term? And what I mean there is, for the first 3.5 months, it's expected we're just going to have what you see. You're not going to have the higher level skills of balanced life for a bishop or other things that come later in the game. So are you okay grinding for month after month after month for that payday down the road that you know is coming, and it could be 3 months or a year away? Or do you want that instant gratification now of your class? So with that said, let's go ahead and dive into the class types. And the first type, is Summoner. This class is great. If you say, hey, I'm playing one character and only one character, and, I work or I have school and sporadic schedule, I'm going to play 3 to 4 hours every day, but I don't know when. And so I'm not good I can't be in a constant party. I'm going to be on my own. Why Summoners are so great is because you, the player, are the buffer for your summon. Now, here's some different drawbacks and different things to think about. The pets are expensive. You have to use either Spirit Ore or Soul Ore or whatever to summon the pets, and it becomes an expensive way to level. You almost need a second character that's grinding up Adina for you so that you can afford to play the character. And then within the summoner classes, there's some different styles. The Elven Summoner is the most popular summoner. It has AoEs, and you can round up a bunch of mobs and AoE them. The Warlock later gets a crit rate buff. It's very similar to the Elven Summoner, but later it gets a crit rate buff, which is more desired in Archer or Dagger parties, where the Elven, for the cast speed and such, is more desirable in Mage parties. The Dark Elven is rare, the Phantom Summoner, but it is very good with debuffs. And so for a raid boss party, for example, I would choose a Phantom Summoner to debuff the boss. And there are some other classes that summon, such as the Dark Adventurer, or even a Warsmith has a summon. And those could be considered too, but these are your summoning classes. Next, very popular, is the Archer classes. Okay, so at the beginning of the server, Silver Rangers are going to be likely the most popular or the most useful Archer classes. They're the fastest, and they have self buffs. They have self windwalk, self shield, self might, so they can do more in those respects. Now, the Phantom Rangers are very nice. They're the most powerful of the archers. They hit the hardest. Also, they have a skill that I'm blanking on the name right now, but basically it allows them, when they get to low life, to do massive damage to the mob. And that is a way to level. It's a dangerous way to level, but it's very profitable because you kill in less hits, and it gets quite amazing with that class. And then lastly is the human, the Hawkeye. Those have the most HP. Those have snipe. They're amazing for sieges and other things. So, choose your archer class, but at the beginning, day one, the Silver Rangers, until buffers catch up and other things, would be the go-to class there. Next, we look at the wizards, and there are 4 wizards to choose from, and let's talk about that. So the spell singers, those are considered typically, before the necromancers get up there, the best PvP class, because they're the fastest casting and so forth. They can interrupt others, nukers, and things of that nature. But the challenge is they're also the weakest. So what a spell howler can kill a mob in 2 hits, it'll probably take a spell singer 3 hits. So you have to be really extra careful about what mobs you choose. It's much harder to level a spell singer, but ultimately, in terms of PvP, it's a lot of fun. I played a spell singer back in Leona for a long time. Now, the Sork is very similar. It's going to be a good thing for the Queen Ant raids and so forth. Beyond that, there's really, it's similar. It's more powerful than the Spell Singer. It's faster casting than the Spell Howler. It's kind of the middle of the road thing, and I generally don't like middle of the road. It doesn't turn out so well in these games. Necromancers. The challenge with the Necromancers is it needs the Cursed Bones to cast its spell. It can still do Cursed Deathlink without, but otherwise the Cursed Bones are rare at the start of a new server. So it becomes more powerful later in the server. It's amazing because you have the transfer pain of the pet, but early in the server, I would not play a Necromancer. Later, once you have the higher level buffers, and you can start a new one, once you have the Adina, and once, of course, you have the Cursed Bones saved up, or there's skill introduced in the game where they can summon Cursed Bones, then a Necromancer would be more palatable. Last, let's look at the Spell Howler. Spell Howler is the most powerful nuker, meaning it would be the most efficient to PvE with. It goes ahead also and gives you 2 choices of spell types. They're normal wind attacks, but also they can use the dark spells. They can use the Cursed Bones like the Necromancer. So later down the line, when you're fighting a spell singer, you know to put on your gear, your defensive gear that has water defense. But when you're fighting a spell howler, you don't know whether that spell howler is using their wind attack or their dark attack, and so it's more challenging defensively speaking. Also, the first dragon, Antherus, is weak to wind, so that's something to keep in mind there. But Spell Howlers body to mind very efficiently, and even without Empower, they'll do as much damage as some Spell Singers with Empower. So it's definitely the most efficient way to level as a nuker. Next, let's go ahead and look at the rogues, which are daggers. And you have your typical, your elf dagger, which is the planeswalker. It's fast, it crits a lot. The dark elf is amazing because of its backstab and so forth. Its deadly strike to kill in one hit. And then there's the treasure hunters with fake death and so forth. So, and it's a typical thing where the human has the most HP, the dark elf has the least HP. I won't go into too much other details here, as most people are familiar with them, but early in the game, daggers are a strong preferred class because they just go in front of the mob and hit. They have high evasion, they're quick. They're a very strong class early in the game. The other class that's here is the bounty hunters are considered rogues, but it's just really a different class to talk about. Bounty hunters have the spoil, so they're a great money-making class. They also have polearm masteries, so they can be in pole parties, and later they get mass spoils, so they're really good in pole parties. Some different things to think about there, and with fake death and so forth. Moving on, we have the warriors. Okay, this is where we have the tyrants and destroyers, which you've already seen, and many people prefer them because of the stats from the other server and so forth. But real briefly, tyrants are going to be the faster class, where destroyers are slower, but destroyers are incredible raid boss farming class. You get their HP low, they hit for a ton of damage, and that sort of thing. Warsmith, most people know and understand a Warsmith, but a couple things that people don't think of right offhand. One, they are summoners. They do have a summon they can summon. Two, they do have polearm masteries. In addition to that, they can make a lot of money crafting early in game, just sitting in town and being available to craft. Other than that, you have the Warlords and Gladiators. Warlords I love. They are a key AoE class. They are perhaps the optimal fast leveling PvE class. They can make some amazing parties where the Warlord just stands there and, let's say, a BD and Swordslinger, they dance and sing, and then they run and pull a bunch of mobs to where the Warlord is, and you can just kill 20, 30 mobs at a time. Extremely efficient money-wise, extremely fast leveling. If you have a good party, nothing will beat a Warlord. Then you have Gladiators, which, again, I'm not a Gladiator fan because it's a mix. It's a mix between a tank and a fighter, and those mixes tend to not do as well in terms of they're jack of all trades, master of none type of thing, and other classes seem to fare better. Knights, which are tanks. So, okay, let's talk about them real quick. The most popular tank is the Dark Avenger. Why? Because it gets a pet. So you want to go ahead and consider that. It's a popular character, and it's fun to play, and these other things. Temple Knights, they are the fastest. And so if you're going to say, hey, I have a Warlord party, I need a tank to pull, I'm going to want a Temple Knight just because it's fast, it can serve as a puller, and it has its heal cubic. Remember, the tanks have cubics and so forth, some of them. So, that's something to think about. SK, you have the cubic for Paralyze, which is powerful. It doesn't always land. In fact, it has a low success rate, but there are things you can do to increase the success rate. And it's a fun to play class. Excellion, our original ally creator and leader on Leona, he played an SK, and it was a lot of fun. And then lastly, the Paladins, which are many consider the truest tanks. They're the human tanks. They have the most HP, and they're the tankiest of the tanks. All right, so we got two class styles left. One is healers. Let's talk about them. The real true only healer in the game is the Bishop. Later getting balanced life and some other things, the best reses in the game and so forth. Now, the Elven Elder, it will have the second best res, where the Bishop has 90%. The Elven Elder gets up to 80%. So that's a key class, plus it has the recharges, plus later the things like Clarity to reduce your MP usage is huge. and reduce weight is very useful, and it has all the defensive buffs, things like Blessed Shield and so forth. And then you have the Dark Elf, the Shillian Elder. The key buffs there, Empower is huge for all the mages, and then Vamp Rage is huge for all the melee classes. So that is just a very key character for many people for many reasons, and later getting Prophecy of Wind, which allows you to keep your run speed but still have some nice stats. And I think people who play those mostly are decided, so I won't go into anything more there. And then lastly is what we call the Enchanter classes. And let me try to see if I can adjust this slide up. Yeah, okay. So Prophet, very popular class at the start of the server. It's the standard buffer. It has all the buffs basically. And if you're not sure what class you want to go, you can start off as a Prophet, get it to 56, and then use it to power level any other character you have. It's a great class to have. In fact, that's a consideration for me. I'm still going through these classes and deciding. And, a 56 Prophet, you have all the buffs, and you're set until, if for a server with the level 70 cap, there's not going to be Prophecy of Fire or other things. Sword Singers and Blade Dancers are key classes. They're both, Blade Dancer especially is a very good, character on its own to solo and so forth, although you definitely want the buffs. But Sword Singer, you got the Hunter Song for more crit rate, you have Song of Wind for more speed, you have the Vitality Song for more HP and so forth. These are all key classes for leveling, for parties and all those other things. Lastly, let's get to the Orc buffers. So you have Overlord and Warcrier. So the Warcrier is similar to the Prophet, but it can buff the whole party at once. So the good of that is it has some buffs that the Prophet doesn't, such as the Vamp Rage. It's a different name, but it's the same idea for a melee party is really strong there. It's missing things like the Bless the Body, the Bless the Soul, and Zerk. But it is a very strong class on its own in that respect. Now let's talk about the Overlord. The Overlord is a key class, of course, for clans. It is every clan needs one, if not two. It can heal the whole clan at once. It can heal the whole CP of the clan at once. It can buff the whole clan at once. And it's just amazing. Now, it is missing some key things. It doesn't have Vamp Rage. It doesn't have Haste. But there are adjustments you can make. There are Alacrity pots, which give you Haste 1. There's a lot of things you do at the start of a new server for those first few months that you never would think of later. Like using Alacrity pots, like at times XPing without soul shots because you can't afford it, like not having the best gear and the best weapon and not having any epics. It's a different game, and when you're choosing your class, you have to think about these things, and especially think how you're going to level. Ideally, you get a constant party, and sometime between level 40-ish and so forth, you go ahead and you start as a constant party and you play 9 players, getting the most efficiency, the most XP bonus, the party bonus from the game, and these other things. But others will just say, hey, no, I'm going to duo and so forth. But I would encourage you, if you're going to duo, rather than just making 2 characters on your own from day one, consider duoing with another person and hopefully finding someone whose schedule is similar to your own, to where the 2 of you can duo together every day. It's just a different game than sitting there and boxing 2 characters, where it kind of gets lonely that way and more boring. So I hope this has helped you decide what classes might be best for you. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. I'll be happy to answer. There's 2 other final things. I'll direct you to the L2 wiki. I'll leave the link in the comments so you can see the information there. Now, the information for L2 Wiki Classic actually has from the Europe server, so it's going to go far past L2 Classic 1.5, which is what we're going to launch with. And the second part there is there's some videos, short videos from others about different class types that are really helpful, that I'll go ahead and share some links there. So I hope this was helpful. Let me know, and thanks, and have a great day.